I'll introduce. Well, here we are. My wife has encouraged me to do America's Sweetheart. I mean, I forgot what Hell in a Handbasket used to be the name of my show.
I like America's Sweetheart.
You like America's Sweetheart?
I think it's apropos for you.
But of course,
when I think of you as a sweetheart.
My biggest issue in those days, I used to do it as a segment on Sunda's show. Uh-huh. The X and Sunda show on JLTV. Okay. All right, so I used to get up and I used to, read quickly what was going on during the day. And in those days, almost everything that was going bad with the world could be traced back to Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
Jimmy Carter is the original American evil of the 20th century, in the 21st century. He's caused more trouble than any one man.
Yeah, he was despicable in a certain way.
And it reminds me of the way things are now. Jimmy used to lecture. Do you remember when things were cold and oil cost money and Jimmy told everybody to wear a sweater?
He was very practical.
But being practical, Americans want heat. They don't want to wear a sweater. There's an expectation of a certain lifestyle.
Yeah, but objectively, I think it's better if more Americans have sweaters. That's one way to look at it, is my point.
That's true, but Kamala Harris' policies, she could be Jimmy's illegitimate child. Remember, he was always claiming that he was having lost. What was it in his heart? He was adultery in his heart or something?
Yes, he was.
I bet there was this pair of side drawers that he had Kamala. He's the secret father.
Well, I know he was happily married to that.
Rosalind, right?
Rosalind.
Yeah,
that was her name.
But what I don't get
many years
is that they showed a picture of Jimmy Carter the other day saying that he was early voting in Georgia.
It's 100.
Bullshit. He's in hospice. He was in one of those wheelchairs where they're just like this. I was wondering who was holding his hand. Oh, you want to vote for Joe Biden? He has to be more demented than Joe at 100.
They let him build houses until about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, he loved doing. No,
he's been climbing up on the roofs. Him and what's it, Rosanna?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, Rosalind.
They were both up on the roof till they were 90. So they were like 97, right? Trying to bring people to Jesus and building houses
and growing peanuts.
He was a peanut mogul. At first, I don't know.
He was not a poor man.
The guy had some experience in the private sector. Is what I'm saying. He wasn't a lawyer, I don't believe.
And they had Billy Bear.
Well, Billy was a delightful chap.
Was he great?
You have to remember, this generation loved the Dukes of Hazzard. It's a very similar thing. A hillbilly and a slightly less capable
Actually, they
hillbilly.
like the cut-off shorts more than they like the Dukes. The car and the cut-off shorts are what did it.
I was fond of it. But I'm ashamed to say I actually wore those cut-off shorts in the late 70s and rode a skateboard.
I wanted my car. I wanted that car.
Yeah.
That was good. That was a major muscle car.
You're talking about the Dukes of Hazzard?
The Dukes of Hazzard.
Where would you drive it?
You could wear your cut-off shorts.
No, it's got the rebel flag on top.
I know. I can't drive that anymore.
Drive it anywhere.
God almighty, you'd be stoned by the Democrats.
There's a conservative twin brothers. They're black. They have a show called The Hodge Twins.
Oh, really?
And they've been raffling off an exact replica of the General Lee.
Of the General Lee. Well, you're not allowed to use that name anymore, right?
I think you can say it, but you'll suffer consequences.
So you realize Robert E. Lee is one of those people who made one massive mistake in his life. He was offered 2 posts. Winfield Scott offered him to be the head of the Union Army. And then he decided he had to go back to Virginia. Because this is the part that Americans don't understand. We really are 50 separate countries linked together by the Constitution. This is a federal state. This is not a democracy. All right?
I feel it's a very different country when I go to Pacoima.
It is.
We are a blended people, what I'm saying. That's one thing about Los Angeles is there's 420 different cultures, from Saigon to Little Ethiopia. It's a little international.
Why is the food so bad?
Where in Ethiopia?
See, here it is. In New York, you have the same blend of cultures, but they cook better. Did New York get all the good cooks?
They're closer together. They have to cook better.
You could go into a Vietnamese restaurant or a Thai restaurant in New York, anywhere, in the shittiest neighborhood and get a decent meal. I got to go to run to some other place here to get even close.
Well, I think the mob is still in control there, so there's more quality control.
Italians
here it's just them.
The mob.
You know,
Can I say one thing for the
say what
mob?
you will about the fellas, the guys, you know, but they kept a tight ship.
Yeah.
And I preferred some experiences more.
Sunda took me to a pizzeria in Deep Dark, New Jersey. They brought out a can of Coke, and then the guy ran out and said, "Oh, that's the wrong can." And I was thinking it was one of those cans of Coke where you screw off the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And they're probably smuggling in the cocaine or whatever.
That's filled with hair.
Filled with drugs.
Filled.
Filled. It was the pizza connection again. It had to be. You know, it's the strangest thing I've ever seen.
Don't say that.
But you see, here's the thing. Lee was a great general, right? Or so they said.
Sure, he just, you know,
chose the wrong side.
Pretty much.
Well, he felt he had his duty to his state.
How many slaves did he own at the time? He might be like, you know what, I'd like to keep them.
Had to have,
You know,
he had
it's just
they had a big
a
plan.
snap decision.
They had a big
Like,
plan.
look, I want to win no matter what side I'm on.
So remember, he was a bit of a
Okay,
nepo
this
baby.
side, if I win, I get to keep them.
But remember, he was a bit
And
of a
and
nepo.
what do I do with them if the other side? What am I
They were
supposed to?
having problems.
They
with
won't want to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think he must have had at least 100. He had that big plantation to run. The most uneconomical system in the world is slavery.
Well, because maybe it became like more expensive as the industrial age induced.
That's not
They
what
needed
happened.
people that made low wages to buy the products of these factories. It became that like we switched from an agricultural
You realize that.
government, and the South stayed. So they were kind of, I want to, again, Bo and Luke Duke, love them, grew up, wanted to be them, but the South was a little bit
Let me put it to you this way.
more primitive in culture,
You,
let's say.
you come from an Irish culture, right?
I do.
You realize that the Irish are almost 100% to blame
Usually
for the state of American blacks today.
that's usually the case.
You know, American blacks are doing great, and then we imported the Irish because they work cheaper.
Well, you kind of diluted the stock.
We diluted the booze.
Well, we whatever was left, we found eventually.
Well, you know what Wellington said, considering the people who won, the Battle of Waterloo were mostly Irish. And what were they recruited for? He used to call them the scum of the earth, recruited for booze and something else. I forgot what it was. He was a horrible person, Wellington. Total white, the king of white supremacy.
But he has a point.
You think?
I think if you really look at it, I'm not poo-pooing him. And I love his beef. I always loved his beef.
Did he invent the beef Wellington?
I'd like to think so.
Well, I heard that all he ever ate was boiled mutton. What a boring person.
He would be
Boiled mutton.
a dour chap. Indeed.
Had to be. He was boring.
That was the entirety. What if he invited you over?
You know, I
and
hate
you're
to
like,
say it.
what are you having? It's like the third time you invited me over, and it's boiled mutton again?
Yeah, boiled
And you
mutton,
call yourself a
potatoes,
friend of
cheese.
mine?
And you're a duke.
I don't, a duke. I've never questioned it before, but I need to see some paperwork on your dukedom.
Well, he was Irish, you know.
Your dukedom
He was
is,
Irish.
your
Got
dukedom is
that.
somewhat suspect.
He was Irish.
Once again, you got to watch him.
I got to remember the Wellingtons were Irish Protestant royalty.
Yeah. Well, we're not Protestant Irish. Those aren't really Irish people. No, those
I've heard
are-
that, by the way.
Yeah, it's not true.
They're not Irish,
No, they came from Scotland.
but they are Gaelic.
Listen, I don't look into their bedrooms. What I'm saying is,
So,
I love everybody, no matter who they love.
but let's think about England. Which has an analog to so-called what's going on in the Middle East. Okay, here we are, these very happy people. What were they called? The Celts. Here they were. They had their druids. Once in a while, they burned a body. No big deal.
Poet warriors,
Yeah,
bipolar
wonderful.
poet.
Yeah. Here they were. They had England. Who invaded them? The Saxons.
Yeah, from the
Typical German invasions.
The Germans didn't want them; they expelled them.
The Saxons were thrown out of Germany, so the Saxons came in and they invaded England, and they moved the Celts to Ireland
That they did,
and Scotland
and Wales.
and Wales. All right. Then they got invaded by the French. Remember, the English upper class are all French by nature. The Normans were French, but they weren't really
They seem
Normans.
kind of like sissies to me.
No, it was back to they were Vikings.
Vikings.
England was getting invaded by the Vikings. Then they got invaded by the civilized Vikings called the Normans.
You ever think the Vikings ever kind of caught a conscience and they're like, what if we just plunder this time?
So let me ask you.
Like an ethical. We don't need to do
Why
that. I'm
aren't the
6'5"
Irish-
and I've got my own ship. I could get all the pussy I
So
want.
why aren't the Irish going to England and saying, this isn't your land, it's ours. We want it back. I want back Windsor Castle because you stole it from us. They don't seem to do that.
No.
They don't think about that, right?
No, we were not a very forward culture where we really would think that way. The Saxons were expansionists and soon expanded. The longest colonized country on earth is Ireland, 700 years. And they're still there.
Israel got
still
about
there.
2,000 years of people trying to kick us out of our own
Yeah, but
land.
those are various visitors. This is the one and only
They don't last, do they?
Holy Roman Empire that ruled most of the world at one point.
It was
the
like
sun
a
never
holy.
set.
Funny thing is,
And they're still in Ireland. Could you imagine if the English were still in Detroit? I would love that. I would love to see
whoa.
them try to be in Detroit. Yet they're
all
still
kidding
in
aside,
the
but
northern
it was
portion.
the French in Detroit. They didn't the French
All things
found
find their
Detroit?
way back to the French.
The French. Most of the ills of the world do find their way back to the French. Oh, the French do produce a number of great things. Their wine is fairly good, though the Argentinians have been beating their ass.
Many of them joined the French resistance shortly after the war ended.
That's true. They were all wearing their little Cross de Lorraines after the war ended. How many French here it is. The French couldn't even do resistance right.
They were not good resistors.
No, they had communist resistance, they had FFE resistance, Free French resistance, and then they fought among themselves again.
Yeah,
They can't help it.
They don't like other people, and they can barely stand each other.
And they hate speaking any language other than their own. And they can
They will mock you.
immediately.
They will openly mock you.
Immediately.
So the ones in the country are a little more gracious, but the Parisians can be quite savage.
disgusting. So here's a funny one. You hear that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry purchased a house in Portugal. Now, they made the mistake of being loyal to the family because it turns out that his nephew is the real estate broker that they bought it from. It's kind of like what happens in Beverly Hills, where the Persians buy a house and their wife gets the brokerage fee. They say, "My wife is a real estate broker. You have to
Sure,
stay."
they're forming a little alliance.
Yeah. So here's the problem. They were doing it to get EU passports
I
for
see.
the kids. The problem is he can't qualify for Portuguese citizenship. He doesn't speak the language. That's one of the requirements.
I don't know how
He's the only British royal who doesn't speak at least more than one language.
Well, again, how many things have I lost out on in life because I couldn't speak Portuguese just like
Well,
that?
you're certainly missing out on Portuguese citizenship.
I've always thought to myself, what if
I
someday
hear it's the
will-
safest place in Europe.
It's a difficult quandary to relate to, is what my point
So
is.
I have a bit of a
I'm
point.
buying out. What did he buy, like a mansion, so he could qualify for citizenship? Can you imagine if that's what you had to do here to
You
get
do. It's
citizenship?
called EB-5.
We'd have immigrants that had to buy.
Yeah, they do.
That might be a good
Well,
policy here.
It is a policy here. We have that program. It's
Yep.
called EB-5. What do you think? All these people to come here.
They
from
didn't
China,
offer it to us when we come
$500,000
over.
You guys didn't have the money.
Well,
I mean,
that
you
part's
did
true.
come steerage.
We got it, though, eventually.
I mean, when you look at the Titanic,
Christ, I can't argue with you when what you said is 100%.
most of the people, that went down with the Titanic were Irish.
Yeah, it
They
was.
were in the lowest portion of steerage
Yeah, well, that's generally where we were everywhere at the time.
at the time.
We would die coming over. Like, half of us died walking to the ship and half died on the way over.
It was alcohol poisoning.
Well, 12% actually were so drunk they fell off the boat. That is the one. That's actually true. That's documented. There were special when they kept the books. They had a layoff on it.
One of the greatest
20%.
films ever made in America, comedic films, was Blazing Saddles.
I like that film mostly because it took the piss out of everybody.
Everybody.
And there's nothing sweeter than, it's great to shake hands and sing Kumbaya, but to be able to take the piss out of each other, that's a powerful quotient between people who somehow think maybe they're too different to get along.
The only person who
If you both sit and laugh at the same thing,
Exactly.
it's like, I forgot what color the flag is. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
What flag are we
It's like,
talking
I'm so
about?
terminally Catholic, I'm scared to say I'm atheist because God might hear me.
Well, that's an interesting part about Irish atheists. They hedge their bets.
The Catholic Church is the number one
They still cross
cause
themselves.
of Irish atheism, leading cause.
I thought it was Catholic priests.
No, that's homosexual rape.
Well, you know, my wife tends to talk about Irish nuns.
Here's the deal.
It seems like they're a bunch of whip-wielding dominatrix lesbians.
No, that's a fantasy, Mark. I've been to that section of Pornhub.
Have you?
No,
Is there a section of Pornhub for that?
there's a section of
I
Pornhub
hear
for
Kanye
everything.
West is so cheap, he only watches Pornhub.
Really?
And does he make videos with the wife that he just threw out?
I think there's probably, they found thousands of cameras installed. The level, you know, like, I think Chuck Berry drove a gal to Indiana, and she was 17, and they put him in jail for 2 years.
It's called the man.
But here's the deal. It was always a dangerous culture. Rock and roll music is no longer dangerous. It hasn't been dangerous in many, many years.
Some Grateful Dead members.
And there was always a level of violence. Like even Elvis shaking his hips was like, what? Because my grandpa, my aunts loved him, but I heard it in retrospect.
That's because they didn't know the truth.
They said, my uncle said, when I saw that fucking guy on the TV, I thought it was a spaceman.
But you know Elvis was Jewish.
Yeah, I don't know where you heard that, but it's 100% true.
They pulled out his mother's stone that they put away in Greystone. There's a big Jewish star there because his grandmother was Jewish.
Yeah, Mendel, she ran a boarding house in Virginia. And Presley, if you look, always wore a Star of David.
Always wore a Star of David.
And they did ask him in an interview, why do you wear that? He goes, I don't want to get kicked out of heaven on a technicality.
That's what he said. Because the truth is, it's, you know.
But yeah, technically, like his mother talked to him when he was a child and told him that he was
The whole family.
And said, and back, this is what Elvis said. He said, not to tell people.
Up until one
not to tell people.
Yeah, up until one or so generations ago, you would find older Puerto Rican women lighting candles on Friday nights. And doing this and lighting the candles, but they didn't know why they were lighting the candles on Friday nights. It's an easy story because most of the people who settled Puerto Rico, Venezuela, the original Spanish, people were Moranos.
They're horrible paying utilities on time.
Who, Moranos?
Yeah.
I don't know about
no,
that.
Bad, terrible credit too.
There are none
They have a
left.
problem with their credit. I don't know if you've ever
Of course they have the problem with their
If you've ever
credit.
waited on one.
I don't know. I couldn't spot one.
Very demanding.
But we had a friend whose father got a disease from Texas, whose father got a disease that only hit Jews, a genetic disease. No, one of the weird ones.
Who?
And then they tried to figure out, well, why? Because they were conversos who moved to Mexico and ended up settling in Texas.
Okay.
Strange migration of people. Would you say that the Irish become atheists because of the church, but they don't leave it?
Well, there are different reasons than believing that you stay in a church. You know, it's a structure that humans need. And like as large as the world is, you can only really be close to about 70 to 80 people. And like really, beyond that, it's a mirage.
Oh, you saw the Cardinal, by the way, at the Al Smith dinner?
I did.
He's definitely on Ozempic.
Everybody's on Ozempic.
Not me. I can't get the insurance company to pay for the goddamn thing. I'm busy going to the cardiologist, making sure to see if I have a heart condition so I can get some excuse to get it. They won't pay for it.
It's very expensive.
$1,400 a month.
Jeez.
You have to be a Hollywood star.
I had a Coke habit in the 80s that was barely that.
It didn't cost you $1,400 a month. It cost you $1,400 a week.
Well, I sold the stuff.
Well, then you were eating your product.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to eat. You're not supposed to snort the product, Patty.
Yeah, I always found that out the hard way.
What did you have?
Sometimes I was optimistic. I'm like, I'll buy a quarter. I can sell this much.
Is that why there were three?
And then I'd lock myself in a room and start
Is that why
the
there
whole
were
thing
three
by
Colombians
myself.
outside with machetes
and look out the
looking
window.
for you? Who's that? Who's that?
Did you hear that? It's a radio.
But that was so 1980s.
Yeah, the 80s were kind of an obscene era in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
I would hate to be the celebrity that's watching YouTube on the Studio 54 videos that they're showing. You see everybody you know doing crazy shit on those videos. They don't know what's on those videos.
Which videos?
You go to YouTube and you watch Studio 54 videos, you all of a sudden could be pointing and saying, look who that is. And God knows they're half dressed, but we're writhing around on the floor. It's crazy.
They have these types of things on the YouTube?
Yes, they do.
Oh, heavens.
Patty, in 20 years, they're gonna be YouTube videos of P. Diddy's parties. Or they're gonna be on Pornhub.
But I'll be honest with you. Like, part of me goes, oh my God, what, this is a terrible thing. Then the other part of me goes, I want to see those fucking things. I want to look.
Depends.
I'll admit it. I want to have a look. Who the fuck is fucking
This
who?
is the one I want.
Especially the crazier it is.
There's an alleged video.
Isn't that Reginald Val Johnson and Neon?
No, here's a good one. What was Jennifer Lopez doing during those parties?
Probably not much.
Watching, maybe.
Okay.
See, now, Beyonce's on stage with Kamala Harris tonight. If I was her, I'd be home worrying about my STDs because God knows what Jay-Z was doing. He's certainly getting implicated by, shall we say, what's the word you would use for implicated by imprecation?
Here's what I don't get. Like, the whole thing, she wanted $30 million, Cassie. The thing that said all this.
Yeah.
She said $30 million, and he was about to give her $17 million.
Right.
And he's a billionaire. So really, he just should have done that.
That's it.
And who knows if the feds were looking at him otherwise. But certainly dragging that girl, like, when I look at that tape, what people don't know is that's edited, you know.
Has to be.
Like, they filmed him all the time. It was mostly peaceful. Like, most of the tape they had on him, he was being peaceful.
You mean
they
in the
edited
hallway?
it just to show him beat the shit out of him.
But that was the only one that was in the hallway.
It was mostly, that whole day is on camera, and it was mostly peaceful.
Okay.
So,
Until he got too high.
yeah, they edited that just to the point where he was beating the living shit out of the girl up and
With all
down the
due
hallway.
respect,
But most of the tape from that day was peaceful.
I think I can control myself to stay peaceful all day and all night and not beat the shit out of some woman, pulling her around by her hair, kicking her and stuff. What was he so mad about?
You know,
That's an interesting. What made you so mad to go running out to the hallway with a towel on, beating the shit out of some woman?
I heard she didn't cook his ham sandwich the
I
right
was
way.
gonna say.
Could be.
Like, I don't know him,
I don't want to know him.
but whatever it is, he did something.
Oh, he's done a lot, but he don't have any money anymore. They're going to find that the money's gone. Yeah, here's how it goes. You buy all those houses, and then when you put mortgages on them, you got to pay them. But you got to pay the maintenance. So there's like 5 mansions. Then there's all the staff and the hanger-ons he was paying for. Well, that's saving him some money. They're all in the witness protection program. And then what do you have? You lose all your endorsements. Nobody's buying his shit. So he doesn't have the income stream that he used to have.
So here's a bigger question. Because that's fun and there's a lot of math involved.
Well,
But
I am a lawyer.
is he deserving of that for what he did?
okay. You mean deserving of his money?
I mean, look, there's one thing that he's entitled to under the law. There's something else where you say, does that motherfucker deserve maybe?
Let me.
You know, or is he just one of 1,000 people that do that, and they're dragging him out and making an example out of him?
I may never be able to
beat the
show.
other ones
I may
apart.
never be able to show my faith on Crenshaw Boulevard again. But I will tell you that the problem I have with the whole rap culture is the way that they exploited black youth. And here's the way it goes. Sean Diddy Combs was making sweatsuits that said Sean John on them. The cost of making those shitty sweatsuits was maybe $3, made here in the United States by illegal immigrants. Then when they started making them in China, it was probably costing them 35 cents. It's just big blocks of flocking, and it's so easy to turn them into sweatsuits, and then he prints Sean John on them. So at the time, one of my clients in the rag trade, who was the last manufacturer of men's suits in America, told me what the genius was. The genius was putting his name on it and making them big. My brother-in-law, the infamous Jamar, was a big boy. He used to wear, they all wore Sean John sweatsuits. But they were paying over $100 for something that cost $30. And it didn't cost him that much to advertise him because all his rappers were wearing it. So in the end, where was the money coming from? It was coming from people who could ill afford it. That's the whole point of the music, of the albums, of everything. The whole culture is built upon lauding somebody who made money with the bling and this and that, and it comes from the lower rungs of the society who are worshiping. You know, they love the music and everything else, but they're buying all the shit. They're dressing a certain way, though, and it's an exploitation. And it kind of and when I realize over the years, it kind of bothers me that's the way, you know, our society gets structured with, you know, with exploitation. And, you know, the Democratic Party's in on it too. You know?
Well, they're normally in on everything.
Yeah, they always want to cut of the action.
It's either the Democratic Party or Hitler. That seems like now, lately, that's all it is. It's either these.
Where did he come back? I thought
Hitler has made a huge comeback.
Made a huge comeback.
I mean, just in what I like to call honorable mentions.
Who's his biggest fans? Morning Joe, Kamala Harris, Obama. But forget Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton loves Hitler. Hillary Clinton probably would have been the most fascist president in history.
She seemed like a stern realtor.
You think she reminded me of a stern nun?
In her boss lady pantsuit. There's like a boss lady pantsuit mafia. If you look in the media.
That's
now,
true.
There's a whole bunch of boss lady pantsuit.
You know what Kamala's wearing?
A pantsuit.
No, Hillary's pantsuits when she was slimmer.
Is that true? They swap clothes?
They swap clothes. Same ugly colors.
Are they friends like that? I like to think that's true. Wouldn't that be great, though? If they
but Hillary kept them in her closet for when she was going to lose the weight.
Parties. I'd like to be. I'd like to be.
I took the girls to a Yankee game, and we had good seats, and Clinton comes, Bill, and he's up in one of the sky boxes. And in those days, my kids had never been in the skybox, so they point up and they go, "We got better seats than the president." Well, at least they recognized him. You know,
that's
pretty good for 7 and 10-year-olds.
Oh, politically, very political. Well, your kids are very sharp.
Yeah.
I have a son who doesn't know who the president is now, and he's 32.
Well,
he doesn't have a driver's license. He's fierce. He made a bunch of money in Bitcoin. You can't tell him anything. He's 32 years old.
But he doesn't drive?
He's never driven.
Well,
he was in a band in Europe for like 8 years.
Right. And
made a living. And never drove.
Which baby mama was this?
Was my first wife. Well, does that exclude you from saying baby mama? Is that sexy?
I didn't know baby mama is a great.
I was actually married to her.
I got yelled at.
And she was my baby's mom.
I got yelled at by someone for using the term baby mama.
What's that?
Because, you know, somebody made a comment. It happened to have been Eddie Griffin, who I always found to be very funny.
He is very funny.
And he's nice too. So Eddie made a comment that that Donald Trump's really a black man, which was reminiscent of Clinton playing so we'll get to the saxophone again. So why
are we going to the saxophone?
We're going to go to the saxophone. Why did Eddie Griffin?
I was just thinking, is that
Bill
where
Clinton
this is
playing the
headed?
saxophone on television made him human. You know?
Is that what it was?
See, the thing is, you looked at Bill Clinton, and he's somebody you definitely wanted to get high with.
Yeah. Bill Clinton,
and that's why people voted for him.
Both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, to me, because I grew up around the car business.
Okay.
And my dad worked at these different car lots, and he actually had a new car. For a couple of years, it was a bad time, but he was young. But here's my point. Both Bill Clinton and Donald Trump remind me of new car dealership owners that my dad worked for in like the 70s.
Okay.
Their personalities, you know, they very, very much so. Salesmanship, but you know, there's a way with Clinton's charm that you know you're being charmed. And there's a certain abruptness to Trump that rings authentic. And it reminds you of somebody's tough uncle who maybe not the guy that owned the car dealership, but his son.
All right, so
who, you know what I mean? His son.
So when I grew up, and I can say this because it's all public record, there was a place called Edelman's Auto Parts. So Edelman's Auto Parts was this big, long warehouse and you walk in and there's like 10 feet of front to the place, and then there's a counter, and you'd walk in. Jerry was always walking around, Jerry Edelman, with a cigar in his mouth, half smoked, and a t-shirt and a wife beater, and he was a Jewish guy. So Jerry you'd walk in, you say you needed a muffler for a 1932 Fork, and you suddenly hear what seemed to be the English language coming out of Jerry's mouth, telling them exactly where the muffler was. All right. His wife and his mom, Cookie and Queenie, used to come in on Fridays.
Cookie and
Queenie.
Oh,
Cookie was the wife, Queenie was the mom, and they used to come in with brown paper bags and empty out the register. So years later. Wait. Years later, Jerry killed his wife.
This is all leading to the saxophone.
Jerry reminds me of Donald Trump a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so because Jerry was always very gruff, but had a heart of gold, but he killed his wife. And everybody I grew up with knew why. He couldn't shut her up. I could have seen Bill Clinton shooting Hillary. I could have seen him getting so angry one day, pulling out his shotgun and saying, she made me do it, and getting off. Because Jerry got off. Because there wasn't a single person, prosecutor or jury person, who didn't grow up with Edelman's Auto Supply. You're not going to put Jerry in jail. He was a local hero in Brooklyn.
Sure.
But the point is that both of them don't seem like presidents when they're presidents. Clinton looks like, a huckster from Arkansas, and Trump reminds me of a construction worker who somehow made money.
And he did.
Yeah, he strikes me as the guy whose father owned 3 Cadillac dealerships. Like, in terms of, because there's an archetype, it doesn't make him less effective.
Right.
It doesn't take away anybody should like him or dislike him.
Right.
But he reminds me very much of a guy whose father owned like 3 Cadillac
Well,
dealerships.
he said his father owned like 300 apartment buildings.
Yeah, but it's a version of the same. There are, archetypes on different scales.
Yeah, Bill Clinton's family came from nothing. He's more like
from Hope, Arkansas.
He
didn't really know his real father.
But you know what?
His name was Blythe. His name was Blythe. He was the proverbial traveling salesman.
Well, you know what?
And his mother, remember his mother when she was alive? She loved horses.
Yeah.
She was alive briefly after. She was great.
But here's the funny thing.
And remember, his brother was a cocaine runner.
Right.
Oh yeah, Roger.
And a country music singer.
Roger Clinton.
This is better than Dallas.
This is better than Hunter.
No.
But the funny thing about Clinton is that
Hunter's
he was
got foreign intrigue.
Clinton was the tryout for Vance. J.D. Vance is a success. Is a much slicker Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah, because Clinton himself was a Rhodes Scholar.
That's correct.
He's a fucking smart guy.
Smart guy.
Yeah.
You hear him talk.
And Vance is very, super. They got that Appalachian.
They both come from the trash parts of America. Very bright.
Hillbilly savants of some sort.
Somewhat. You think of Andrew Jackson. Now, Andrew Jackson was the first populist in America. They hate him. For some odd reason, they hated him then, and the Democrats hate him now. Why is it they don't like Jackson?
They hold a grudge, don't they?
They really do. Because Jackson was the one who used to talk about the military-industrial complex.
Did he used to wrestle Indians?
No, wrong guy.
Oh, that was Johnson.
No, I thought that was Daniel Boone or something like that.
No, he was a president, but he was also like that. Back then, they really didn't mind, he's legend to be a massive Indian killer. They'd be like, I don't give a shit.
That was Davy Crockett.
He's going to let me park my carriage closer to the shop.
Well, you know the rumor about Lyndon Baines Johnson, by the way. Now, he was a big Texan.
He hated basset hounds.
No. He had a huge penis.
I've heard that. It's funny. Yeah, I've heard that.
And he used to whip it out. When he was arguing with people, he'd take it on the table and say, because he was 6'4", tell it to Jumbo.
Man.
Crazy man.
Yeah, I heard he threw fecal matter at Hubert Humphrey.
No.
Really? Dog fecal matter or human fecal matter?
He'd get mad and fling it at him.
I thought monkeys did that, not presidents.
I will hunker down like a jackass in a hailstorm. Hubert!
Hubert Humphrey was completely and totally screwed by a bad convention. Never hold the Democratic convention in Chicago. It's bad luck.
Why?
Well, yeah, your brother getting assassinated
Right, yeah, that helps too.
That kind of shoots it in the leg.
Well, I saw RFK the other night, and he always keeps talking about his uncle, or his
Dad?
father.
Or his dad. Okay.
Or his dad, but he'll say he tells Time by John F. Kennedy. So he said, when my uncle was president, people had the worst health care in America, ever.
Oh, so he conflates the two.
Well, because he was 10 years old. We're the same age.
Okay.
All right? But he would...
when John died, yeah.
When John died. Well, John died. You mean when he was assassinated by the CIA? I'm a true believer that the CIA and that J. Edgar Hoover had something to do with his death.
Well, they had reason not to like him. There's rumors of stuff he was going to do.
He had great pictures of J. Edgar Hoover in a dress.
Everybody held those pictures at that time. My Uncle Tony showed them to me when I was 3.
About the Clyde Tolson was the boyfriend. He was number 2 in the FBI.
He was in the academy one year. Then he was the vice director the next year.
Who, Tolson, right?
And he was living with.
They were living together.
Oh, yeah.
They used to go to the racetrack together, have a good old time.
They say Edgar would slip into deep Halloween parties in full-on drag in Hollywood circles. And just walk about as a very ugly woman.
There are things not told about Hollywood circles that should be told. And as a young lawyer, I represented Kenneth Anger.
It was Hollywood Babylon?
Hollywood Babylon. He was a character. I represented him in an assault or a defamation case with a woman called Coco Crystal.
Coco Crystal.
Coco Crystal.
That sounds like a porn name.
No, she had one of those, public access television shows.
Well, some of those were great.
Well, the best one had to be Robin. What's her name? My God, my mind's going.
Robin, yeah.
So my friend Renee, I am the best artist. Shout out to Renee. Renee got busted with Al Goldstein. From Screw Magazine.
There's a character.
So what Renee did is Renee made this giant cross and put a vulva on it, where you would usually have the baby have Jesus.
Vulva on the
a vagina, a sculpture of a vagina on the cross.
I got you.
Okay, got dressed up like Jesus. He was Venezuelan, by the way.
Well, they're known for that.
No, he's a big free speech advocate. That's how I met him. Got dressed up as Jesus, went with Al Goldstein to the steps of St. Patrick Cathedral. And in those days, you were not a policeman standing guard at St. Patrick's Cathedral unless you were a dyed-in-wool member of the Knights. No question about it. Though I'm not sure which Knights it was, but it definitely was the Knights. So he got arrested, carrying this cross, because what they were doing on the Screw television show was, what if Jesus Christ came back today? What would he say? And here is Renee carrying this giant cross with his robe on and his beard, with a vagina on it.
Jesus.
Well, Jesus, who could take offense at something like that?
Well, this is...
What's all the...
Right.
We were amazed at what all the fuss was about.
You think about it, right? The cops' name, they all called all the cops in those days.
Patties. Yeah, well, the paddy wagon was originally called the paddy wagon, not because the paddies were coming for you, but because they were coming for paddies. It was filled with a wagon filled with paddies. The truth is, the Irish, when they came over, kept livestock in the tenements. They were so rural, most of them, they would literally have a piece of livestock.
Patty, my great-grandmother pushed the push cart over on Delancey Street, and I'm pretty sure there were a couple of chickens and rabbits kept in the apartment.
Oh, yeah.
But she was a caterer. Well, I don't know what they meant by a caterer, meaning she cooked food. Maybe she cooked in other people's houses. You never can tell with family stories.
She killed the chickens.
Yeah, no, Jews don't do it that way. Jews go,
yeah, the snap of their neck.
Snap it right in the neck.
That's how my aunts could twist the neck off.
They were good at that.
Just snap it, and also my wife's mother could snap.
Oh my God, be careful.
They came after the Hasidic Jews because they do this thing where they run the chicken around on their head to get rid of the sins.
Is that what they do?
Yes, it is. PCA came after them.
That is actually very funny. Just meant the picture of someone waving a chicken over their head.
It's great. I mean,
it shows the Jewish affinity with comedy, even in a sacred manner. It's waving a chicken over your... But I don't know, maybe a lot of religious ritual is somewhat solemn and methodic.
Well,
but the act of waving a chicken over your head delights me.
When they were digging around somewhere in Israel, they found these clay tablets. No one could decipher them because they were jokes. How do you understand jokes in Aramaic? You don't quite get the point,
It would soften a punchline.
It definitely softened the punchline.
When do we see you guys again?
When are you going to see us again? The next time we get up here and talk freestyle.
Well, can you get Johnny up there with you?
But you notice, of course, we've basically stayed away from the election. And I'm sure we could have plenty of things to say about the election. But, you know,
But you should cut this
now here's the
pretty-
problem, though. You don't know who's going to cancel you still. You see Harvey Weinstein in court, picture of him?
Hey, he's not long for this.
No,
world.
he's gone. He's done. I met him once. Here I am on a plane. He's the only person changing into pajamas. Why are you changing in pajamas with your Johnson hanging out? And then he sent his assistant back into coach. Why? It's a 5-hour flight from Los Angeles to New York. You would need to wear pajamas? He was just a perv. No question about it.
Yeah, but see, the level of tolerance is interesting,
Yes.
and it can be arbitrary.
It's true.
But that's a tale for a different day.
That's a whole
That's
other story about the
But you-
tolerance in Los Angeles for perverse behavior.
That's a very different thing to do in Los Angeles. Have you ever walked around Los Angeles late at night?
Do people walk around Los Angeles? late
Not
at
certain
night?
parts. There's stuff going on it's hard to believe.
I've been downtown during the day. I can't imagine what it's like at
Downtown
night.
at night is
Now
like
you
the
have to see
Escape
something.
from New York movies.
Oh, my God.
It's not at all.
Have you
It's
seen it?
somewhat in a closer way than I'm comfortable even reliving as I say this. right now.
I can't picture a bunch of homeless guys carrying, cudgels with nails in them and using garbage can covers. Oh, wait, they don't make those garbage cans anymore. No more
So
shields.
flippers. That's because people were beating each other over the head.
That's what with the garbage
They
cans.
figured it out finally. That's a good thing. I actually have to go home now, or my wife will
I
beat me
know,
over
I
the
Well,
was
good. I'm
saying-
glad that you
She
came here.
still has one of those top.
This is like
garbage
the
tops, just-
inaugural show.
That was nice.
well,
That was nice. Are you gonna ask Johnny anything
It's been
at
fun.
all?
Hi, Johnny.
No, are you gonna ask him anything at all? Now
About-
that Patty's leaving, about the election or anything? You
Well,
don't
he-
need-
I have no comment.
We could
Okay.
get him in trouble, you know.
Okay.
I'm worried about the election. Only one thing. All right. I have this bad feeling that if Kamala Harris loses, all right, there's going to be a run on Valium.
How are we getting this thing to Patty, this piece?
I'll cut it off, and I'll make a copy for him. What's so hard?
All right.
I don't know why
You
it's
got
been
pull-up
turned into
pieces that have-
Patty, thank you very much. It actually was a lot of fun.
Well, I had a ball.
Yeah, we can do
I have
this.
a ball anyway. We're just usually sitting over there.
How about thanking John for being here?
Thank you, John, for
John,
being here.
Well,
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I think I'll quote former New Jersey governor and private beach lover, as Chris Christie said on his honeymoon, "Thank you, I couldn't have possibly done this
Come
without
to
you."
think of it, where is he?
Hiding.
It's hard for a big man to hide.
Well, he lost weight, right?
He did,
Go.
but he's a guy, I think he was born to be that.
Well, you know why Chris Christie
You had a
became
cut?
governor?
42 minutes.
Because
Okay.
Jared
Okay.
Kushner's father, who went to jail for bribery.
Okay.
Okay, the former